how many miles you would have to run to make this happen? And is that the lifestyle that you want?
Welcome to This Week in Trucking, the podcast that tells you what you need to know about the trucking market in 30 minutes or less. I'm Caroline. Hey, Gurvir. How you doing? How's your week going?
The week's going pretty good. How about yours?
It's good. It's good. It's Friday. It's early Friday morning. It's a great day to talk about trucking.
Yep, it's a short month. It's February. So yeah, let's get into it.
All right. So we're going to start off with diesel prices. We're going to talk about the freight market and some trends there. We're going to talk about some top stories. And then we're going to answer some questions about the trucking industry from trucking business owners themselves. So let's get into updates on the diesel market. Today's national average for diesel is $4.09. It is down ever so slightly from yesterday and last week, but it is up from last month and not quite to where it was a year ago, but definitely not the lovely below $4 prices that we were seeing in the beginning of the year. Now we're well above $4 a gallon as a national average. So that is a bummer because this is the biggest variable cost that a lot of trucking companies have. Owner operators is the biggest variable cost, and it's just below driver pay for carriers. So this is a huge cost to folks, and it's just going up.
Yeah, it's going up. And I think tightening global markets is what is leading to this. I think back earlier this January, we didn't anticipate this happening, but
Yeah.
I believe the supply is getting tight. Also, the geopolitical outlook in Middle East is uncertain.
For sure.
There's been few production disruptions, winter storms in North America. India's demand has gone up. There is a tightening of supply with OPEC. All of this is leading to higher diesel prices. So yeah, we are about, I think, 20 cents higher from the start of February. So a 20-cent gain. This is not good. Again, this goes all to the bottom line
It happened
for operators.
fast,
And it
too.
happened quick, yes.
Ugh.
I think within 20 days, it went up 20
Yeah.
cents.
Yeah. When we're looking at state by state, we still have a couple of states that have relatively low prices. Oklahoma, Mississippi, Kansas, Missouri, and New Hampshire have the lowest diesel prices by state average. So if you are hauling loads around those areas, make sure that you're looking for the best possible price, and they're very likely to be in those states. The states with the highest average diesel price are the top three. Arkansas was the top three: California, Washington, Pennsylvania. Top three states with the highest diesel price. But then we have North Dakota and Delaware also. So make sure if you're driving out those directions that you stay out of those states when you're fueling.
Yeah, definitely. I think, especially if the diesel prices are going up, you got to be cautious and definitely plan your trips of where you want to get your fuel. I think that can always add a few cents to your bottom line.
For sure. All right. Tell us about the freight market. Gurvir, what's happening there?
So the three indexes that we want to look at is the first one being National Truckload Index. Last month we were at 232. Today we're at 229. And outbound tender rejection. Last month we were at 496. And this is actually coming down. This should be going up, which means that things have gone down a little bit in February and not quite up. And then the tender volume index, that is also coming down as well. Overall, I think the February month has been a very slow start. Diesel prices are going up by 20 cents. Everything else is indicating that we are on a downturn in February a little bit. Rejection rates are below 5. We're hovering around 4.6, 4.8. We need to be around 8 to 10 for a healthy market. So let's see where this year goes. But February has slowed down. January was pretty positive. I think because of the winter storms, that sort of led to the demand, but February is not showing a good signs. So let's see how this month ends. I think March, we will see things start picking up. Reefer demand is doing much better than dry van. So to all the reefer carriers out there, the rejection rates are much higher. So that market is in a better supply and demand. The capacity correction, which is like the carriers that are going out of business, accelerated in January and February, which means we probably should move closer to the equilibrium. And that's our February. Brokers are dictating price. And that's what we're seeing in February. I don't think it's a carrier market just yet. And I think things went down a little bit compared to January.
Yeah, so not great news today for the trucking market. I do sometimes wonder that metric of the number of authorities going down, that is a measure of how many trucking authorities are currently active, right? And I wonder sometimes if they go inactive, it doesn't always mean that trucks are being pulled off the road. It might mean that people are letting their MC go inactive and then leasing onto another carrier and using someone else's MC. And that doesn't always help. That's not going to help the trucking market, right?
Yeah.
Because the truck is still on the road, the truck still needs to haul a load. It's just that the owner has decided to lease under somebody else or sell their truck to another carrier.
Yeah. And I have a couple of friends that are still trying to buy trucks, and some of these trucks are still flying out of the yards and the lots. So not sure. Otherwise, you imagine that if trucking companies are going out of business, what is happening with all those trucks? Are you seeing dealerships just lots full of trucks that are not being sold? But talking to a couple of people close to me, some of these trucks are going pretty quick. And I'm not sure if there's an anticipation that the freight market picks up later. But generally, if you see that carriers are going out of business and authorities are being shut down, it does indicate loss of capacity, which means, hey, rates would come up as more and more trucking companies leave. But you're right, there is always a portion of the carriers and trucks that sort of just end up leasing onto someone else, right? That
Right.
happens a lot. And some of them might just park their trucks, go become a company driver, or just park their trucks and not work for a few months. We always see some of these carriers come back when the market gets better.
All right, let's get into some of our top stories. So today I chose a story from Overdrive. They wrote an article about the FMCSA's safety rating revamp. Could new reports mean in-cab tech will play a role? So this is coming from an announcement that FMCSA made imposing changes to the carrier safety ratings. They're looking at a number of different reports to make their proposal. 4 of the 6 reports that they are using to propose changes are related to the impact of in-cab safety technology in trucking. So this could mean that the FMCSA is starting to take a look at this in-cab technology and take it into account when making a carrier's safety rating. OIDA and other groups say that the information in the reports shouldn't be relied on. They think that the studies are flawed. In fact, one of those reports was about the use of in-cab video monitoring systems, which are really controversial with drivers. And it found participating drivers experienced a reduction in, quote, risky driving behavior when driver coaching was combined with feedback from an in-cab video system. But the groups who don't like these studies say it's not really clear what risky driving even means, and that other studies that are being used to propose some changes have data that was collected a long time ago and that may no longer even be relevant to the technology that's being used today. Other technology reviewed in these reports include collision warning and automatic emergency braking systems. And this all just reminded me and took me back to a conversation that we had a couple weeks ago about the speed limiter debate and the speed governor debate, because you could say that is an automated safety device in the vehicle itself. But it also made me think of the trend toward autonomous driving. I know that's a really dirty word in this industry and super controversial, but I almost see this as the next step in going toward that more autonomous driving trend. We think of technology coming in and swooping in and changing how we do everything all at once. And I think it happens much more gradually than that. And this kind of technology is part of that, which makes sense to me why drivers and driver groups that have drivers' best interests at heart are against these changes and against these proposed rules.
Yeah.
So I wonder what your perspective is on that.
Yeah, FMCSA, their main job is to make sure that the roads are safe. So obviously they're taking safety seriously and introducing a lot of these things to make sure that we get safer and safer. I think you're very right. Like, I think these things are very gradual. Some of these things already exist in sort of our cars. There's auto collision, auto braking. So I think a lot of this technology adoption is going to happen and inspiration is taken from cars and they do work. I think some of the good things are, I think trucks should have auto braking and collision warning. That's a really good thing for the driver, for everyone in the industry. So I think you will probably see more of these changes come as technology advances in the fleet space. I think technology in terms of fleet compliance and safety is going to get There's a lot of opportunity there. You're going to see a lot of companies develop these things. Before we reach like fully autonomous vehicles, you're going to see these types of driver assist features. I think driver assist is a much more friendlier word. You will see, hey, keep your truck in the lane, auto braking, collision warning, all these types of features will come and will become more prevalent in the industry. And I think it's a good thing. I think it's a good thing because the roads become safer. And then the main story, which is FMCSA wants to revamp the scoring system. I'm not an expert on scoring systems, but I do know that every time your truck is inspected or you get it out of service, all these things do impact your insurance rates, right? Okay, what is considered a really an out of service violation versus not? I would love to take a look into it and learn more. Okay, look, how are they categorizing these violations and how does then a safety score is determined? A lot is dependent on safety scores for a lot of these carriers. They have to keep their HOS violations down, their unsafe driving violations down. So let's see what this revamp looks like. But definitely, I think there's an opportunity to make the roads more safe.
Definitely. While I do agree that it's important to stay up with technology and make sure we're using the best possible tools out there to make the roads safer, I also know that there are flaws in studies, and I've seen that before, and sometimes it doesn't play out exactly how the
Yeah,
technologists would love it to. So I'm glad that there's voices out there questioning these things and holding the FMCSA accountable using good data and using
totally.
the right studies.
It should be a copy before these things become concrete for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. We do have an article on our blog about safety ratings and how those are calculated. So we will share that in the description as well if people are interested in looking that up, because that is one of the biggest factors in determining insurance rates, which is in turn one of the biggest fixed costs that you have as a carrier. And so
Yeah,
if you can do anything to bring those down over the years, you're going to become much, much more profitable.
yeah. No, totally. I think if your safety scores are not in a good place right now, you will struggle with getting good insurance. Like I would almost like guarantee it because it suggests that you are not a safe carrier. You're not looking at tires, you're not looking at brakes, and whatever types of violations you're having. It suggests to the insurance company that you are fundamentally not running a safe operation, and their risk increases. So they'd rather not take you as an insured.
Absolutely. All right, Gurvir, what is your top story in trucking for the week?
My story is Convoy is back. Back in last year, October, was shut down, and a lot of carriers were surprised. A lot of carriers actually had open invoices with them that probably did or did not get paid, but Convoy was shut down because of the market in trucking. So not only carriers were struggling, but brokers were struggling a lot. Convoy at one point was valued at 3.8 billion. They had funding from the likes of Amazon and a lot of other big names. It just goes to suggest that the market conditions were very tough in the latter half of 2022. Convoy was then bought by Flexport, which is also a big company, a big name in the industry. And now they finally relaunched the Convoy platform. So carriers are not going to be able to book loads and get freight from Convoy, but none of the liabilities were absorbed by Flexport of Convoy. So if there's
Oh,
any
wow.
unpaid invoices out there, Flexport will not be responsible for those. I wanted to share that with carriers. Let's see if Flexport's going to be able to run this more efficiently. I know there's some synergies there. So let's see what happens with Convoy.
I would hate to be that brand manager right now.
Yeah, it was a big hit on Convoy. But
For
yeah, I
sure.
think
I can't imagine that they have a great reputation among truckers right now,
yeah,
because if they have any or a lot of outstanding liabilities,
yeah.
they've just been in the news a lot for all the wrong reasons. But some people would argue that there's no such thing as bad press, right? Let us know if you're using Convoy. Put a comment below and we'll keep an eye on it. Let's get into some questions that we found out on Facebook groups around trucking. So every week we're going to grab comments and advice and questions and react to them here on the podcast. Dear team, I would appreciate some advice here. I'm planning to buy a truck. The price is $180K. The term of 48 months is resulting in $39,000 in interest, making the total price of the truck $220,000. What do y'all think of this deal? 36 months would be $210K. What is a good plan to go with when buying a truck?
Yeah, this is a really good question. And immediately came to my mind was that, hey, let me just try to calculate how much monthly payment does this equate to.
Mm,
So I did a quick math. It's probably almost like $4,500, $4,600. That's a lot of money. I remember when a few years back, the trucks would cost like 140 brand new, 150, and a monthly payment for 5 years would be like 2,500. Rates were low. And even then, some people were saying that, hey, maybe I should buy a used truck, right? Get my payment down to 1,500s or 1,000 to make the economics work in this business. Thinking of the inflation that has occurred in the last few years and thinking of truck prices at 180 and interest is so expensive these days, $40,000 in interest, it's tough to make the economics work. Like I think you will probably be on the road always, right? I'm not
yeah.
sure if that's the lifestyle that you would want. I would say there you want to know your numbers, you want to run the numbers. Again, there's a lot of other things that matter here, like what kind of equipment are you running, where are you running, do you have access to good freight? And maybe you can make the economics work. But if you're just going to go to a load board and try to get loads off the load board and the market is still soft, it is recovering, it is getting better, but still soft, I think it's hard to make the economics work. The only way they work is you're pretty much running like 6 days a week and you're barely getting one day off, right? You're running like 10 to 12,000 miles a month to make this economic work. It could work. I can see how it could work if your insurance is super, super low, right? And you're just getting really good freight. But again, I would say run the numbers and know how many miles you would have to run to make this happen. And is that the lifestyle that you want? My suggestion would be to review your numbers. Just from looking at this, it does seem high though. So I wouldn't do it. Like I wouldn't suggest my dad to do it, who still drives to this day. I would be like, hey, buy a used truck, man, for 60, 70K, 80K. There's a lot of good used trucks on the market that you can get 3 years old and have as low of an overhead as possible. Because you never know when things can change in life.
All right, from a group Everything Trucking, I registered my driver for Clearinghouse on the FMCSA website. Do I also need to enroll him in a third party DT program as well, meaning drug testing? Is this mandatory?
Yes, so it is mandatory. So these are two different things. So the clearinghouse essentially it's a online database of all the CDL holders and CLP holders and allows like the FMCSA, the employers, some of the government agencies to look at whether the drivers and CDL drivers have violated any of the drug and alcohol testing programs, right? The drug testing is a completely different thing. The drivers are randomly picked and then they need to get their drug test within a week or 2 weeks. And yes, so both needs to be done, but these are separate programs.
And if you're hiring someone who's already been a CDL driver for another company before, they should already be on the clearinghouse.
Yes.
And something that you need to do before you hire them is to make a query on the FMCSA clearinghouse before you
Yeah.
hire them. That has to go in their driver qualification file, and then you enroll them. You also need to enroll them in your company's drug testing program.
Yeah. So the employer, the trucking company needs to be enrolled. Yep.
Right. And this actually relates back to another Overdrive article that came out this week about inspectors. They're going to do a road check inspection spree that's going to take place in May. And so they did a whole article on this. And something that's important to understand is that even completely legal substances like CBD supplements or other cannabis products can show up in these drug tests, and you can fail a drug test if you're using some of these products, even if it's for like pain management prescribed by a doctor, it can still show up and you can still fail these tests. So be really careful of that too, and make sure your drivers know that so that you don't get any delays in your operations because someone failed a drug test.
Important. This is very,
Yeah,
very important. Even like post
hugely.
accident, a lot of people, a lot of carriers forget, hey, what happens if your driver gets into an accident? There has to be a drug test, I believe, within 24 hours.
Yep,
A lot of carriers forget it, and that could be a violation. So yeah, no, this is very important.
huge. And it's not even just that it's you need to do it because it's the law, it's also going to protect you in the case of a lawsuit. So if you don't get that drug test done, they can make claims that you then can't really refute because the driver wasn't tested after the accident.
Yep.
We have a whole article on driver qualification files, so we'll link that as well so people can learn more about that. Next question or comment, I guess, that I saw. Who needs a list of grants to get their business off the ground? Guarantee approval, no payback. What do you think about this, Gurvir?
I wouldn't rely on something like this to get your business off the ground. I think there are not many grants that would just give you free money without checking anything or without any payback. or there might be some grants available with no payback, but they're very minimal. I don't think they're going to be big. I don't think there's fundamentally changes anything, but I'm not sure about the guarantee approval. Yeah, so try to stay wary and be careful of these kind of offers.
Definitely. It's that cliche of if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is, right? I looked into this a couple months ago when people were asking this. You see these posts all the time out on Facebook groups, and I thought, is that even real? Obviously, guaranteed approval. No one can guarantee you approval for anything. Credit card, loan, nothing has a guarantee in this world. So I looked into this. There are groups and organizations that will do small business grants, but you have to look into what they're requiring. A lot of the times they need to be either social enterprises, so they have some kind of social or environmental cause to them, or there's for specific groups of people. So they're trying to support women-owned businesses or veteran-owned businesses or that kind of group support. So you really have to look into requirements of grants. What I suggest that people do if they're looking for capital to start their business is go check out some of the groups that are funded by the government or private foundations that help small businesses. So SCORE is one of those. I'm actually a SCORE volunteer, but they're a group that is all volunteer who go and support small businesses with mentoring. And they can help you find SBA loans or look into grants that are maybe available and applicable to you. So if you are looking for that, don't go to a Facebook comment or a Facebook group. You're much better off looking for a local organization. And SCORE has chapters all over the US. There are plenty of other organizations as well. But yeah, if someone's offering free money with no strings attached, guarantee approved, very likely a scam. Don't get caught up in that. All right. On that note, we're going to close out for this week. Thanks again for joining us for This Week in Trucking, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you so much, everyone. Drive safe.